Hey, part two of making a custom bagpipe cover. Carrying on, I've very carefully removed the drones and the chanter and put them safely away where their reeds won't get harmed. Yeah, I've put in the plugs and I've left in the blowpipe, and here's where we get to it. Now, in the previous episode, I totally forgot to mention that you need a cloth measuring tape. And of course, needle and thread. We don't need a sewing machine for this project. So I've laid out, we're gonna plot the dimensions of this thing. So I've just laid out a straight line here. That represents the back of the pipe bag. That represents the chanter neck. This here represents the middle stalk here. And this XC represents the blowpipe. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to measure from the tip of the bag to middle of the stalk, and I can just eyeball it. It's 12.5, so I'm going to round that up to 13. So A to B is 13, B to C, center to center, 5.5, 5 1/2. C to D, which is blowpipe to the chanter stalk. I follow it around, and I'm going to make it longer because we can always take cloth off rather than put it back. I'm going to make it a 1/4 foot. So there we are, 12. And then just as a belt and braces sort of thing, I'm also going to measure. I could add all of those measurements up, but I'm also going to measure the total length, and that came to 28.5, which I'm going to round up to 29. So there are my lengths plotted along from the back of the bag to the front. Now this first measurement, A to B, I'm going to add at least a couple of inches because of course the diameter of the bag, we need the cloth to go over, and again we can cut back later if we have to. Next I'm going to measure the circumference of the bag. So that's 23 inches at the middle stalk. So E, 23 inches. My measurement at the blowpipe is 13 again. My measurement at the chanter is 6. My measurement at the back here should be the same as at the stalk, at the chanter, at the middle stalk. 23 it is. And that about covers it. I'm going to be generous with these. So here I have, I've sketched everything in, or I've made all the measurements. Now, when we are laying out, because the next stage will be to draw a pattern based on these numbers. And we can see that the drones are not in a straight line. And just about every bagpipe I've encountered seems to follow the same measurements, which is, if you look here, this represents the center stalk, the center tenor drone stalk, that if we draw a straight line and plot the center drone in the middle, we measure 3 inches and then forward an inch for the base drone, 3 inches, and back an inch for the tenor drone. And that seems to be constant, but you never know. There's going to be, particularly with leather bags where people have tied them in, there may be those little bit of wiggle. So for the next stage, just as an aside, here's why this bog paper tube is such a great cheap throwaway tool. It's exactly the right inside diameter fitting over the drone. And in a future episode, you'll see exactly what we're doing with this. So from this, from here, I'm going to take these measurements and I'm going to draw them out on paper. I'm going to do them, well, as you can see, I've already done this on the brown paper. Now, having drawn this, there's 2 ways I can go from here. One, the way that we're actually going to do is I can transfer these measurements to that cotton sheet, that old bed sheet, cut it roughly to shape, and then use it as a test fitting, and we'll show you that next. If you're really confident with this, and if you've done enough of these things, you can then transfer these dimensions directly onto the cloth that you're going to actually use for the finished bag cover. So the next episode, I'll have the cotton cloth laid out and draped over to show you how I would do a test fitting. And then we'll talk a little bit about the selection of cloth, because the sky's the limit. It's your imagination that's the only thing that you have to deal with. Now, in the past, I also should have mentioned, one possible use for the bag cover was to protect your clothing against the bag dressing, which in a sheepskin bag at least is a lot of the time will actually come through the leather. And to that end, I've actually seen on older bagpipes, I've seen the exterior bag cover made of the beautiful material, and inside it a second bag cover made of cotton or linen or something like that. And that was to absorb an extra layer of protection from the greasy nasties used to seal the pipe bag. You could take this thing out and you could hand wash it, sort of thing. So there we go. We've recorded the measurements, we've preserved the measurements, and next we will lay it out on a piece of sacrificial piece of cloth to see how it's all going to fit. So thank you.